Thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Whether you're listening during your commute, while working out, or just relaxing at home, we appreciate you. Every download, every listen, and every subscription means a lot. Up next, the 12 Kyle podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading, and thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. Man, check this out. On this episode, what I want to talk about is like the first crew. I came to this idea actually just through observation. What I mean by that is like, as many of you know, or maybe you don't know, my wife and I, we have 3 sons. Our oldest, Dion, is 25 at the time of this recording. Our middle son, Cameron, is 22 at the time of this recording. And our youngest son, Brandon, is about to turn 18 within probably the next couple of weeks. But the thing that I've been able to notice about them is that they have their crew of friends. And it seems to me like their crew of friends have really traveled the path with them. Like they're still friends to this day with the people that you would probably call their day ones. Now our daughter, Skylar, she's 13 at the time of this recording. She's got some friends too that have been like with her for the entire time that she's been around. So, but even with the boys, I kind of marvel at it because like, in a lot of ways, it's kind of mirrored the life that I've led as well. And so that's what I want to talk about. So my question to you all as you listen or watch on YouTube, thank you for watching. Who was in your first crew? Like who were the people who like ran with you, who kicked it with you, whose house you went to, maybe whose house you slept at or what have you? Who was in your first crew? Because I'm of the belief that most of us are probably still cool with the people that were in our first crew. Now, there are some exceptions because obviously when you're younger, people move away. Sometimes people turn up and just be funny. And then as you get older, you know, things happen, life happens, and you just kind of drift apart. It's not necessarily because somebody's mean or anything like that. It just happens, right? So like my first crew, and when I say crew, I mean outside of family, because obviously if you're, you know, like me, if you have siblings or cousins that are like siblings, not necessarily including them in this discussion, because my brother Damon, who's almost 3 years younger than me, and my cousin Eric, who is 9 months younger than me. I mean, that's generally my first crew, really. and my cousin Mike, Mike is 4 years older than me, and he's Eric's older brother. So now that's truly by far like my first crew. But outside of family, probably my first crew was the Reyes boys, Jonathan and Steven. They were like our first crew. And when I say our, because like we would hang together with the Reyes boys, and they were the same age. Well, Jonathan's a year younger than me, and Steven and Damon were the same age. And we lived, as I mentioned on previous episodes, we lived in the projects, or at least what we call the projects, the section of my hometown of Florence, South Carolina. And we would just play like every day, and we would go over to their house. They would come over to our house, and their parents literally took us in and treated us like, you know, additional sons. I mean, like it was a beautiful thing. And then they had another little brother, Eddie, and then they had a sister, Maria, who came later. And so they were like, you know, brothers to us. So we spent a lot of time at their crib. They spent a lot of time at our crib. We spent a lot of time playing outside. We play football. I mean, that's first and foremost. We would play, obviously, tag. We didn't really play hide and seek, but we didn't really have a lot. But like we made do with what we had. Like, I distinctly remember like one time there was this family that had a mattress, a box mattress, and they had thrown it out, and it was like leaning up against the dumpster. Well, somebody took it off the dumpster, or took it away from the dumpster, And they said, well, hey, can you flip off this? Because it had springs. The springs were still bouncy. And I remember Jonathan like, man, you shouldn't flip off that. And I was like, man, I'm going to flip off this. So I ran and did a backflip and flipped off of the, pissy stained mattress. Now that I think about it, probably wasn't the most sanitary thing to be doing, touching somebody else's mattress. But we were kids. I mean, we didn't know. It was the 80s. We wilded out. We didn't care. But we used to do all kind of stuff like that. I remember distinctly, like during the summertime, I go to their apartment and, their mother, God bless the dead, Miss Lois, she would feed us and we would have a good time. I remember one time we went over there and we made homemade pizzas. So that was always fun. So just, having that sense of connection with, people that you grew up with, I think is a big thing. And for me, it was, that was like literally and figuratively my first crew of cats that I just really, really ran with. But like I said, we played everything. We played outside. We played baseball. We played football. Didn't really play a lot of basketball. But we made sure that we, looked out for each other, especially in the summertime. Summertime was very key because, your mom wasn't going to go looking for you, basically. And now that I think about those times, especially in the early 80s, mid 80s, we spent a lot of time outside, but a lot of time that we spent outside was unsupervised. So if we wanted to walk to the corner store, which was at the corner, but around the corner, if that makes sense, we would do that. But it's still like nobody went inside and said, hey, Mom, we're going to the store. We just walked off. Like nobody cared. Like, and again, Florence is a relatively small place. So it wasn't like we were worried about getting snatched up, but we were always together. So me and the Reyes boys, we've always been cool, always been tight. We've always treated each other like family. Their dad, funny Joe, one of the funniest guys you want to be around. Unfortunately, he's passed away a couple of years ago. And, but funny, really funny, no nonsense, but also just very loving. And I remember one of the main memories I had was he would pile us up in his station wagon and we'd be sitting, no seatbelts, no nothing. And we would get in the car and we would take was it about a 40-minute drive from Florence, South Carolina to this place called South of the Border. It's on I-95. If you've ever traveled I-95, you see there's this huge, I guess, tourist attraction called South of the Border. And it's Pedro, and Pedro's got, sombreros. So you start seeing these sombreros as you're getting closer and closer to South of the Border. And it's literally on the border of South Carolina and North Carolina. And we would go there all the time. And like I said, Joe always treated us like, sons. So that was probably my first early crew. And then I had crew at school, like my boy Sean and my boy Derek. Shout out to Pooh Bear and his brother Tony. So I had friends that, I was cool with and really tight with at school. By the time I got to middle school, things kind of flipped up a little bit. Because by the time I got to middle school, my parents were going through a divorce. This was different because now I'm no longer in the house that I was in because we moved out. My mom kept the house. She just rented it out, right? And she still has this house to this day. And so we moved on the other side of the city to the north side. And now I'm going to a different middle school. So for us, elementary school was 1st through 6th grade, right? And then 7th and 8th were middle school. And then 9th, obviously, through 12th was high school. So I'm going to Williams Middle School. Now, keep in mind, I'm going on the other side of the city. So I don't know. There's only like maybe 10 kids from my elementary school that were going to school at Williams. So I literally get to Williams and I don't know anybody. I know my cousin Eric, obviously. And I know the kids that live on his street, but that's where I was moving to. I was moving from our house to Eric's house. And that was different. So my middle school crew, And it's weird because like I remember the first day getting off the bus, I didn't see Eric. I didn't see nobody from the street that we lived on. And it's weird because I don't think Eric rode the bus. I don't think he rode the bus. But anyway, I just remember getting off the bus and I tell this story sometimes, but like the first person that I came in contact with was a kid that walked up to me. I'm not going to say his name, but he walked up to me and he's like, "Hey man, what's up?" He's like, "Man, I like those sneakers." And I had on some shell toe Adidas. And we just got to talking, but I don't know these kids from nobody, right? Turns out this kid was a nerd. And there's nothing wrong with nerds, but like, you really don't want your first day or your first couple of weeks at school to be with the nerds. But when I got off the bus, he was the first person to talk to me. So like, almost like instant, the rest of the nerds kind of surrounded and they started talking and we started talking. So I'd probably say the first week of middle school, like I was running with the nerd crew. And it's funny now that I look back on it because like, and it's no disrespect to them. But I was probably a little too cool to be running with the nerds. But when I say nerd, I don't mean nerd as in like, you know, super, super, super smart or anything like that. I mean like nerd crew, like nerds, right? And so that happened. And then eventually what happened was, I think, there's a kid that lived on my street named Travis. Shout out to Travis. Travis introduced me to a guy named Rudy. And I didn't know Rudy. I mean, of course I knew Travis because he lived on my street, but I didn't know Rudy. I didn't know anything about him, anything like that. And I remember we struck up a conversation. I can't remember what we talked about, but he was like, "Hey man, come over here. Let me introduce you to the fellas." And he introduced me to some other guys and we just kind of took off from there. Like, and then of course I knew my boy Jay Fresh because Jay Fresh and I went to church together. And Jay Fresh knew them and they lived in the neighborhood next to mine. And so like these guys from middle school, whether it was Jay Fresh, Rudy, Zell, they became like my crew. And so like at that point from there, I kind of pushed the nerd crew to the side and I started running with these guys. Jay, can't forget about Jay, Bill. So all of us, like, we just became really, really tight. And that moved us into high school. And high school crew was totally different and we did different things. In middle school, we didn't really do too much because, you don't have a car or anything like that. So we just pretty much hung out at school. We played, we played football at recess or lunch. Do they call it recess? Was it called recess? I don't know if it was called recess. We called it lunch. I don't want to make it sound like we were in the third grade. Oh, we're going to recess today. But yeah, we just hung out. We didn't really, even though they lived, like most of them lived within walking distance of my house. I walk over to their neighborhood sometimes and we hang out over there and stuff. And Jay Fresh, I go to his crib. But we didn't really again, we didn't have access to cars. So it wasn't too much we could do. We'd go to like the skating rink, which was the place to be on a Saturday or Sunday night. We go to the skating rink or something like that. Or we go to the mall and walk around because that's when you're starting to get that little independence from your parents. But the high school crew and the college crew were a little bit different. So sit tight. Let's take a quick commercial break on the other side. I'll tell you a little bit about that. So sit tight. We'll be back in just a second. Are you feeling nostalgic for the golden eras of rap and soul music? If so, tune in to the Rap Soul Podcast. We are your weekly journey through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, spotlighting the music and the hidden gems that shaped the soundtrack of our lives. From the powerful beats to the soulful melodies, we bring you the best of the past with fresh insights and stories. Rediscover the music that defined a generation. Subscribe to the Rap Soul Podcast and enjoy the vibes. And just like that, we are back. Once again, it's your boy 12 Kyle. This is the 12 Kyle Podcast. And we're talking about the first crew, Like, who were the people that you ran with during, elementary school, middle school, or maybe even college? Before the break, I gave you my crew from like elementary school and then middle school, where the transition was different because not only am I moving to a new neighborhood, but I'm also dealing with a very rocky time in my life, which was where my parents got divorced. So now we get to high school. High school was totally different, as many of you know, or maybe you don't know. I went to and graduated from Wilson High School in Florence, South Carolina. Same crew from middle school. Really didn't change much. We picked up my boy D. You'll hear him he's been on the podcast before, but you'll hear him again coming soon. But D was one of my boys, and the rest of the crew, like I said, Rudy, Zell, Fred, Jay Fresh, we all like still stuck together. And it was interesting because like we all started doing different things by the time we got to high school. A couple of fellas were in band. I was playing football. A couple of fellas were playing basketball. So we were in different activities and things of that nature. But we always seemed to kind of come together. The things we used to do, we used to always hang around school, and it would always be about girls. It would always be about chasing girls, talking to girls on the phone, getting phone numbers, trying to go to girls' houses, that sort of thing. What else? Going to the mall. One of the things that I always loved about my crew is that, like, the high school crew, we really got into music. And by this time, you're talking about probably in my opinion, the start of the golden era of hip hop, because this is like, I graduated high school in 1991, but I got to high school in 87, 88, somewhere around there. So I was there 4 years. And so, I mean, to me, I think that's the start of the golden era of hip hop. I'll talk more about that on the Rap Soul podcast. That's a tease. But it's so that time frame as far as hip hop was concerned, the time frame as far as R&B was concerned, like, was a great time of music. So I was really engulfed in that, and so were my friends. So it made a lot of sense for us to, really, really bond over music, and that was a key thing for us. But like I said, the stuff that we did, and we also, as far as crews were concerned, we really did a good job of pushing each other in the classroom. If Jay Fresh got an A on a paper, I'm trying to get an A on a paper, especially we're in the same class. And I took a lot of classes with my friends. So that was very instrumental as well. But yeah, we used to do all kind of stuff. We used to hang out. We'd go to each other's houses. Let me rephrase that. We couldn't go to Rudy's house. We could not go to Rudy's house. I'm sure he doesn't mind me telling you guys this story, but I think, like I said, I met Rudy in the 7th grade. I've only been inside Rudy's house twice. The second time that I went to Rudy's house, his mom pulled up, and like we were all sitting on the couch watching TV. I think we were watching like Rap City or something like that. And his mom pulled up and was like, "Who are all these people in my house? Y'all get the hell out of my house. Rudy, what's wrong with you? Why you have all these people in my house?" And pretty much cussed us out. And I never said, and I mean, Rudy's mom, she's a sweet lady. She was kind of mean back then. So, she was a no nonsense lady. So we knew she didn't play. So you wasn't going to spend too much time. Now in his front yard, cool. Yeah, I'd hang out in his front yard, but go inside his house. Nah, as long as I've known him, and we talk and text every other day. Never been inside his house. My house, on the other hand, was like the hangout spot. Everybody used to come to my house, even when I didn't want them to come to my house. They would come to my house, but that's another story for another day. But yeah, Jay Fresh, I go to his house, or Zell, I go to his house, and we would just hang and we would just kick it. And like I said, it almost always surrounded some girl or something like that. And then obviously, we would hoop at my house. I had a basketball rim and a huge driveway, so we played 3-on-3. As we got a little older, we'd swim in the pool. We had a pool, or have a pool, I should say. And that was dope, always dope. And I mentioned on previous episodes that Eric and I would throw pool parties, which was always dope. I mean, who wouldn't want to see, your classmates or girls that in bikinis? I mean, like, that was love. So yeah, that was the high school crew. By the time I got to college, now that's where it kind of changed because like you're going to college and now all of a sudden you have this situation where you are, going someplace else. And like none of us went to school together. Jay Fresh, I went to South Carolina State University. Jay Fresh went to Claflin, which is right next door to South Carolina State University. And so that was probably about the closest. Everybody else went different places. And so like we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have, the ability to talk or text or anything like that. So, if you call somebody, you had to call them long. It was a long distance call or you had to write a letter. But the college crew really, for me, really came out of nowhere. I, as I mentioned before, I played football at South Carolina State University. Some of my closest friends from my college crew were guys that played alongside with me. My boy Mo, my boy Russ, Big Mel, Quevin, Nalon, just to name a few. And so like those guys became like lifelong friends. And then you meet people along the way. The interesting thing about my college crew is that like I really, and this is going to sound crazy, but I really didn't expect to make many friends at college. And the reason being is because like I had so many friends from my high school crew that I really didn't need any more friends. I was just like, I'm good where I'm at, so that was a pleasant surprise. And people always raise their eyebrow when I say that, but I'm being honest. Like I came to South Carolina State, not saying that I couldn't make friends, but it wasn't high on my list of agenda of things to do. I knew that one, I was going to play football. Two, I was going to graduate, and I didn't even go there thinking I was going to meet someone who I would fall in love with and marry, and we'd have 4 kids together. I didn't see any of that stuff coming. I just wanted to maintain the friendship and the relationship that I had with my crew from high school. So, so my college crew was different. And so it was always good, not just those guys, but the other people from college that I brought in that became crew as well. But yeah, I like I said, in conclusion, I wanted to get to this episode just because I'm looking at my sons now as they grow. And Dion, he came here. He's in grad school right now. He came home a couple of weeks ago for one of his good friend's wedding. And I'm like, wow, these kids are getting, but I mean, he's 25. So, I mean, I guess this is about the time kids get married, I guess. And I'm watching him, Cameron and his crew. Now Cameron's crew is a little bit different. Cameron, he's got like, it's a crew of, what is it? A crew of 4 of them. So it's 3 of his closest friends. And like, he's been tight with them and they've gone to school together since I think he was in the 1st grade. I think like they've been tight that long. Like, and they remind me so much of me and my crew. Same for Brandon. He's got a couple of close friends. It'll be interesting to see what happens when he goes off to college next year, how he maintains those friendships. He should be able to maintain those friendships because, you got technology. For me, I didn't have that, but we made it work. But for me, I guess the moral of the story of this entire episode is like throughout your travels and throughout your time, you're going to have different stages of friends and crew who will mean certain things to you. And it's about what you do with those people and how they make you feel and how you make them feel as to how you stick together. And more than anything else, you have to make a concerted effort to make it work because, without crew, what else you got? Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. The podcast drops every Thursday and every Sunday at midnight. From time to time, we drop bonus episodes. Well, actually, no, we're not dropping any more bonus episodes. We're just doing Thursdays and Sundays. Let me not speak that into existence. We also have a new project. It's called the Rap Soul Podcast. It is the intersection of rap music, soul music from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, just intertwined discussion. It's the best music podcast that you've never heard. So check that out. You can find that podcast wherever you're listening and watching this podcast. I mentioned watching. We have a YouTube channel for there and for here. Make sure that you subscribe on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscription button so that you can get all of the updates when the episodes drop. The interesting thing about the YouTube channel is that we have both audio, we have both audio and video of YouTube. If you're on social media, hit us up. 12 Kyle podcast across the board, Rap Soul podcast across the board. We're on Twitter X. I don't know how long, but we're on Twitter X. Blue Sky. Follow me on Blue Sky. If you're new to Blue Sky, check out Blue Sky. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, and TikTok. Can't forget about TikTok. And if you'd like to contribute to the podcast financially, you can hit us up on Cash App, $TWELVEKYLE. Also, there's a link for merch in the description box. Click that link. You can buy 12 Kyle Podcast t-shirts, hoodies, and coffee mugs like the one that I'm pointing to right here. That's going to do it for me. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. We'll catch you guys next time. 5 G's. Yeah.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the 12 Kyle Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and share this podcast with a friend who needs the 12 Kyle Podcast in their life. Every listen, every download, and every share helps us grow. Thanks for being a part of the 12 Kyle Podcast community. We appreciate your support. We will catch you next time. 5,000.